Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another great episode of On the Throttle with Jackie Van Ham and my buddy Josh, bringing you all the exciting news going on out here in motorcycles and power sports. We've got quite an episode for you. As always, thanks for tuning in, clicking, liking, sharing. Say hey to us in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're brand new to the show, welcome. Welcome to On the Throttle for today's episode. In the great words of that poetess Christina Aguilera, we're going to get dirty. And Josh, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods?
So for me, I've got two things today. As always, we are on the verge of something at CES. There's a hint in there. And KTM is going to do something. I'm not going to give anything away, but it's LC8C, and it's going to end with a 90. So, yeah, not giving anything away there. So so we're just getting dirty on your stuff, or is there anything else? Or is it all dirt?
It's all dirt all the time on my part of
Perfect.
today's
I
show, but you're
love
going
it.
to have to wait. You're going to have to wait and find out about all of this getting dirty after a word from our sponsors.
There are still billions of dollars available for businesses through the Employee Retention Credit Federal Tax Credit Program. Stenson Tamaddon has helped companies with less than 500 employees retrieve over $3.4 billion in tax credits through employee retention credits. Call Stenson Tamaddon today at 866-934-8461 today to start your application. That's 866-934-8461 to apply. Call now.
Well, welcome back, everybody. As promised, today's show, for my neck of the woods anyway, a handful of stories that have everything to do with getting dirty and dirt racing. It's that time of year. Supercross just kicked off. I've got some stories talking a little bit about Dakar. And beep, 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 breaking news. American Flat Track Racing just released their 2023 calendar. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. Our first big story, we had round one this past week for the folks over at Supercross. This was at Anaheim, known as A1, Anaheim 1, and we've got a couple of results on the page for you right now. This first things first was a heck of a race. These are the results from the 250. Jet Lawrence 1, RJ Hampshire 2, Cameron McAdoo 3, Mitchell Oldenburg 4, Max Boland on 5. Now, this race, really exciting racing going on. Again, this was at Anaheim 1. There was lots of some drama and action. I don't want to give too much away, but in the 250 class in particular, Austin Faulkner had a really huge crash right on the start straight. Really unfortunate for Faulkner. The rest of the racing was really exciting. As you can see, Jet Lawrence had a heck of a night. He is not super well known for having a real good time at Anaheim. So congratulations to Jet Lawrence. This is the first race of the season for the folks over at Supercross. That is the results from 250. If you want to throw that next slide, Miss Ashley, I did have results for the 450 as well. Very top of the box, Mr. Eli Tomac coming in one. Eli Tomac, last year's champion. Also, not known for having a really good time at Anaheim traditionally, but he shook off all those bad vibes and came out on the top of the box. Cooper Webb 2, Chase Sexton 3, Dylan Ferrandis 4, and Ken Roxon in 5. There was some interesting racing also going on in the 450 class. Again, I don't want to give too much away. If you missed the race, you should go track down either the highlights or some of the feed, probably over on the YouTubes. But I just want to leave you with this. Malcolm Stewart, for part of this race, was leading the race. Mind totally blown. Unfortunately, that didn't last for too terribly long, but at one point he was leading this race, and then he had a kind of an odd crash. Eli Tomac during part of the race also had a weird kind of slip and slide and like basically spun out his bike. He got back on and obviously shook it all off and ended up at the very top of the box in 1. Our next round for Supercross will be going on. I believe you've got one more slide to show, Miss Ashley. It's going to show that it is in Oakland in California, and it is coming up on the 14th of January. Again, round 2 is up in Oakland, and it is January 14th. That's what's going on, kicking off the season for the folks over at Supercross. Josh, what do you have going on for your first story? And did you watch Supercross?
I actually did watch it, and it really was good racing. One of the things that I loved seeing is that when you look at both the 250 and the 450 races, out of the top five, four different manufacturers. That tells me that
Yeah.
they've got that type of stuff dialed in right. They've got it as a level playing field. No one's running away with it like some other series that we've been known to watch. Is that it's dialed in, that we're going to have competitive racing all year long, and that is what I really like to see.
Yeah, very exciting start to the 2023 season. I'm excited to see where we go from here. Now, what's
Yeah.
going on for your first story today, Josh?
So when I said we were on the verge of something, of course, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, has turned into this mismatch of just anything that has electrons in it, which is pretty much anything now. It's going to be there, and there's everything from semis to cell phones to whatever. Verge Motorcycles took this year to release their new Verge TS Ultra. This is a shot of the bike here. It is a pretty sleek looking bike. Obviously, it's going for that kind of naked Street Fighter look. So they've got a couple of versions of this TS bike. There's the TS Pro, and the TS Ultra. The TS 0 to 60 in 4.5. It'll fast charge in 55 minutes. Top speed of 112 miles an hour, 155 miles of range, 107 horsepower. That in itself is a great electric motorcycle. You go to the Pro, 3.5 seconds 0 to 60, 35 minutes to fast charge is all, 124 miles an hour top speed, 217 miles of range, 137 horsepower. That is bananas. But as I said, they just released their Ultra. The Ultra is 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. They just take it down in a second every time. 25 minutes for a fast charge, which is usually 20 to 80%. 25 minutes. That's a cheeseburger and maybe something to drink. Top speed still 124 miles an hour. The range is 233 miles possible out of this, and the horsepower is 201. Now, the other thing that is very interesting about this is this has 880 foot-pounds of torque. Yes, 880 foot-pounds of torque. I've been around trucks a good portion of my life, and this is more torque than a lot of Class 7 and Class 8 trucks on a motorcycle. This to me is bananas, and I mean, it's just asking for a great way to rip your arm straight out of the sockets. If we take a peek at the next slide, one of the other things that's very unique about this is kind of futuristic, is this has a hubless rear wheel, and the motor is the hub itself. It's a very, very interesting design. The thing that I love about this is obviously there's no driveline losses. There's no chain to maintain. There's none of the issues that we all kind of gripe about are there. This is the motor that you're looking at inside the rear wheel. Now, the only things that I don't like about this, that I've looked at this, is how quickly does that get dirty and dirted up? And maybe we lose some performance out of it. The other thing is that is going to add a boat ton of unsprung weight. So it's interesting to see that. I think it's an unbelievably sexy design in terms of that rear wheel. I mean, it's obviously very Tron-like. I definitely dig it. The other advantage that you get with it, of course, then too, is when you put the motor in the wheel, you could put all the batteries in the very bottom of the bike. There's no restrictions on where you can put batteries. So to me, I think this is really awesome. That unsprung weight really isn't going to matter to people because all they're going to do is they're going to have to go to their tailor once a week to get extra sleeve length put into their shirts, because this is going to rip their arms straight out of the sockets. This can be yours for only $45,000, and they are already taking reservations on the TS and TS Pro. They've actually sold hundreds of both of those. So this,
Wow.
Once again, when people start to poo-poo some of the electric stuff, you see bikes like this, and I gotta tell you, this is the one. This is the type of bike that takes this to the next level and gets people on board. So, I mean, first off, what did you think about the rear wheel there, Jacqui?
I mean, really interesting technology for sure,
Yeah.
and you nailed it. CES has really turned into a really interesting platform for e-bikes in particular in the last handful of years. It kind of started for like around 2019, we saw some more e-bicycles, and then at
Right.
2020, it seemed like that was like the tipping point of e-bikes really going hot and heavy and ending up at CES. That was also the year, you might remember, that motorcycle Damon showed up
Yep.
at CES. They ended up winning the Innovation Award for that
Yep.
year, which is a huge deal. Out of all of the products, the Damon E-Motorcycle ended up winning, so that's quite a lot to say. And since then, it has just really snowballed, and we're seeing way, way more e-bikes showing up. I am here for it. I love it. I love seeing all
Agreed.
the stuff come out from CES. I'm a tech dork. I love looking at it. So this is really interesting to me. No shocker about the power of this bike at all. I mean, it's on and off like a light switch. It's no loss. It is straight from battery to the wheel. Interesting technology though is that hubless rear wheel. That is a really
Yeah.
interesting choice and just another bit of a, I mean, I don't want to say novelty, but it is a bit of a novelty for this bike
Right.
that makes it stand apart from the rest of the crowd. So I think it's a really cool, very interesting thing. I missed. Did you have numbers on prices for this?
Yeah. 40, only 45K. So if you've got a spare kidney, I could maybe find a buyer, and we could each take a kidney and maybe get one of these.
I'll tell you what, I can just about afford downloading a photo of it. So that's where I'm going
Yeah.
to stay
Yeah.
for this beautiful bike. But I do love seeing it. I do love checking these cool things out. And
For
it's
sure.
the not only the it's not the future, it's the now. It's here. It's happening. And as you
It
mentioned
is.
in your story, they've sold several hundred of these already. So very, very interesting news from the folks going on out in the e-bike world for sure, and from the folks at Verge. Thank you so much for that. My second story for today, while we were sticking with the Get Dirty theme out here, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Dakar. Dakar has been going on since the late 1970s. They just kicked off last week on the New Year's Eve day, however you want to phrase it, on the 31st, and we are halfway through today. So I just wanted to go ahead and post a couple of photos. If you don't follow Dakar, you should. Super inspirational. There's a little bit of everything. There is motorcycles, there is car, there is truck, there is classic, there is quad, there is all sorts of cool stuff going on with Dakar. Something in here will interest you. I cannot get too into the stories today because we would literally be talking about this for hours because there's so much going on. But I just wanted to put together a quick little slideshow from some of their images over on their social, which you should be checking out. Super cool footage over there or at Dakar.com. Ashley, hit it, my friend. Let's check out some of these great images. So again, just some cool motorcycle stuff going on out here. Speaking of, the one story I did want to touch on, because we are, of course, an American-based program, the number one right now for U.S. or for bike in the bike class is Skylar Howes, who is an American. So good news for the Americans, and a little bit of a surprise. We're not always at the top of the pack, especially at the Dakar. This is usually a very, very international vibe. We usually are not super competitive. I'm not going to lie. We're not super competitive over there, but I do love following it. I do find it incredibly inspirational. Next slide, please. How cool is that? Look at all of this dust, all of this dirt. This is what, Josh, the second or third year that this race has been over in Saudi Arabia. Before that,
Yes.
it was held in South America. It's ping-ponged and been a couple of different places. Currently, it is in Saudi Arabia. Next slide. Look at the trucks. I love this class. This is like peak inappropriate racing to me. I love this. For whatever reasons, the Russians seem to totally dominate this class. I always love watching it. Next slide, please. And some quad action going on out there. There's multiple quad and modified four-wheel classes. I did not grab a slide from it, but like I was saying, there is a classic class as well. It is dominated by Toyota, what is it? Toyota Land Cruiser or Forerunners. I don't remember the exact truck that is super common out there, but I love that they have even like a vintage, like a classic class. Next slide, please. All right, so that leads me into my final Get Dirty story for today, and this was just released. This is super duper breaking news. This is the 2023 calendar for the folks over at American Flat Track Racing. All dirt racing all the time on today's show. Of course, the season kicks off at Daytona. That's been traditional for the past handful of years for sure. There is, however, a couple of little screwballs in here. They brought the Arizona Super TT back. They also put the Buffalo Chip TT back on the calendar. I thought that was really interesting. There is also a race going on in Ventura, California. That's not super new, but the West Virginia half mile, they haven't been down there since the middle 2000s, if I remember that correctly. And the season is ending this year at Springfield 1 and Springfield 2. Those are, of course, Springfield miles. A bit of a jewel in the crown for the racing over at American Flat Track Racing. So very interesting calendar coming up this year. Josh, what do you think about my Dakar and American Flat Track Racing story?
So it's interesting, and if anyone would like me to do a deeper dive on this, I would actually love to, because Skylar Howes has an absolutely kind of crazy backwards story compared with how most factory racers get there. So yeah, if anyone wants me to do a story on that, do me a favor, put it in the comments, and I'll do a deep dive on that next week if you guys tell me to. That being said, some other people that are out there that from the U.S. is the T3 class heads, Mitch Guthrie, and there's also Seth Quintero in there. And Seth is, if I remember correctly, I believe it was only 17 or 18, but in the top of the list now also. So those are some other Americans that, once again, we're starting to get this sand stuff figured out. These are obviously people that typically have grown up in the southwestern corner of the U.S. They are not in the middle America like you and I are, Jacqui. If there was trees, if there was trees and clay, we'd be all over it. But with it sand, not as much our thing. But yeah, Dakar is always such a great event to watch. I mean, I love catching the highlights, even just if I only have time for that in the evening, just because so many things can happen. And these guys are all racing. And when you see someone goes down in racing, typically they're like, okay, there's corner workers for that. There's no one here. So people will stop. And if I forget who it was in the stage 3, they ended up the racing sanctioning body gave him 5 minutes back for stopping and helping another rider. So they gave him a time bonus of 5 minutes. Like, okay, you were there for about 5-6 minutes. We'll go ahead and give you that back, because this is the middle of the desert racing. This is, I mean, there is no one around anywhere. This is not a spectator sport unless you're watching from the camera on the helicopter. And it's one of the things that I love about it.
Yeah, I love watching the footage. This always just thrills me. It is just so packed with stories. It is just a true test of man, machine versus nature, the elements, the ground, the terrain. I love watching this for sure. I love following their social also, because they just posted a couple of days ago how the car class is really leaning on the motorcycle class to go ahead to literally make the tracks so the cars know where they're going. Of course, the car guys and maybe some guys and gals were not too happy about this analysis. The bike teams all thought that was pretty hilarious, that the cars were kind of counting on them. So anyway, just really, really fun. I don't want to say infighting, but, you know, lighthearted back and forth about who does what and what class is at the top of the pile. It's just really, really great racing. I love watching it. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. If you have missed that this is going on right now, make sure you go click over. Again, the website is Dakar.com, if I remember correctly, and they've also got tons of social media. There's footage all over the place. Make sure you go and check it out. Always really, really awesome racing going on. All right, Josh, what do you have going on for your second story today?
So there were some design registrations that have been released from KTM. So the thing that's funny about this is, so when you look back, KTM had the 990 in the early teens, I guess we'll say, which stemmed from the 950, which was a V-twin LC8, which, once again, when it became the 990, that's when the 90s started for the KTM, which really started in the teens, but I'm confusing myself now. So the 990 then turned to the 790, then went back to the 890 as the LC8C. The 790 and the 890 were the LC8Cs. But the 790 is going to be back in certain countries, but not in the US. We're still keeping the 890. And this engine right here on the left, we're pretty sure is going to be the brand new LC8C 990. So the version on the right is the 890. That's the current engine that's out there. The one on the left is what we're pretty sure is going to be the 990. So this is, as I said, it is a design registration, meaning it's just basically external appearance, but it helps them register that and protect some of the things about it. We won't get into all the legalities of it. To me, one of the things that I see about this in this first slide here, it is very, very close to 890 dimensions, especially when you look at things like engine mounts and other items. They are all pretty darn close to the same place. When you look at overall engine height, it's about the same. When you look at oil pan, it's about the same. When you look at front to back, all of those are very close to the same. Same ride-by-wire throttle bodies. The water pump is the same there, as you can see on that. And same thing with the ignition coils. Now, if we go to the next slide here, we'll see some differences that kind of let you know that this is a very different engine. So as you look at this here, you can see that these cylinders are a little bit taller. When you look at that brake line between the cylinder head and the cylinders, it is higher on the one on the left, which once again is that newer motor. The other thing that you'll see in there is you'll see some different ribbing where they've taken out some in order to change how it's supported and where it's supported. To me, that probably says there's some different cylinder liner shapes and that inside of there. The other thing I noticed with this right offhand, looking at it too, was we have higher exhaust ports. I can't really say that they're bigger or not because the one has manifolds on it, the other one doesn't. But it looks like that could be the case for these. To me, the way that I see a lot of this is KTM is in this war, and they really did so much with the adventure bike space. And obviously those engines went in other vehicles too. But KTM has done so much in this adventure bike space, and I don't want to say they used to have it all to themselves, but they didn't have nearly as much competition. And KTM is known as, let's face it, their motto is ready to race. So they want to make sure that if you're buying their premium product, you're getting premium suspension and you're getting the most bonsai engines that you possibly can. With KTM being in a power fight and so many others stepping into the arena, for them to bump up the engine displacement back up to a 990, I tell you what, it makes a lot of sense to me because they want to make sure that they stay ahead of everyone else. I mean, look at how Ducati just jumped into the fray. Kind of, I know Ducati has their eyes set on eating some of KTM's lunch, so KTM wants to make sure that they stay ahead of this. To me, it's interesting to see this. You guys know I love seeing technical drawings. I could stare at these things all day, and especially with them next to each other, I could sit here all day and be like, oh, and so yes, I could do this all day. To me, it's interesting to see that this is coming out. It's interesting to see the design changes. I'm interested to see some numbers from this finally when it comes out. So are you going to be comparing these by lifting these engines, Jacqui, to see which one's heavier or no?
Well, all I know is when you started talking about them, I swear we were playing a game of who's on first because I was completely kerfuffled by what was happening here. Is it a 790? Is it a 990? Is it an 890? What's happening here? Really, I mean, interesting story. I didn't catch. What were you saying? What platform is this going into?
So they haven't stated a platform, but this engine, if you look, all the mounting points are the same as the 890 that has been, whether it be the 890 Adventure, whether it be something like a Duke, whatever. So if the engine mounts are the same, they're going to be able to use this in every 890. So do they get rid of the 890? Do they keep the 890? What are they going to do with that? So many questions.
Yeah, it makes sense because everybody's hovering right now at that. You know, we're having a lot of entry, particularly from Asia companies, into the middleweight category. But most everybody else, most boutique brands, most European brands are bumping up closer to 1100 and 1200 cc's. So it doesn't surprise me that they are slowly creeping their way back towards a leader bike again, because that's kind of where everybody else is living. So not a huge surprise for me, but we're all going to have to wait and see what happens out here. You know that the minute that this news drops, we're going to be bringing it to you here on the program. So make sure you hit that notifications on, hit that subscribe button, do all of the things and the stuff. Speaking of breaking news, here in about a week and some change, the folks over at Harley-Davidson are going to be having their digital launch. We will be discussing discussing that on a future program. So make sure you come on back. You are not going to want to miss it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.